In this presentation, we will enter customers into QuickBooks Pro 2019. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. Here we are in the QuickBooks Pro software. We currently have the Open window open. You can see that by going to the View tab and the Open Windows. So that the only window open at this time is the home page. We're going to enter new customers into the system, and of course this is going to be very important for the system because one, it tracks who our customers are, and it can help us to track and keep track of the information for the customers so that we can contact the customers. But even if we have that information elsewhere, the customer information within QuickBooks will also be necessary in order for us to create the invoice, to create the sales receipts. So we'll need that information in process. It will also be necessary anytime we want to track if someone owes us money. So if we're in the type of industry where we invoice the client and then we expect to be paid by the client at a future time, we expect to get a check in the mail, such as a bookkeeping company, or for example, would be a service type company where typically we do the work, we expect to be paid later, then the customer information is necessary so QuickBooks can track who has paid us and who has not paid us. Now, when we consider the Home tab, we have the Customer section here, and we know that the normal process is going to be the creation of the invoice, the receive payment, and the record deposit. Now, we need these two items to basically be connected through the customer owing us money to be able to track who has not yet paid the invoice. So there's a couple different ways we can set up the customers or get to the customer setup process. We could go to customers here, and that'll go to the customer center. They call it the customer center. I usually like going to the drop downs, however, because the drop downs are always there. No matter where I'm at, if the home page isn't open, I can go to the drop down. So I'm going to select the drop down up top. We're going to go to the customer center. So we'll go to the customer center. And that's going to give us a list of customers. Now, we don't have any yet because we're setting up the customers, but we would have the customers over here on the left. Notice we have two tabs, customers and jobs, and the transactions. We want to be over here in the customers and jobs. Jobs are going to be kind of related to customers, so we'll talk more about setting up jobs at a later time. What we want to do now is just enter and list our customers. So if we have customers that we want to input into the system, if we were already running the system, we would just enter them one at a time, and there's a nice screen up here to do so. We can just say new customer, drop down up here, new customer job, and go to new customer. And then we would enter this information, and this is a nice screen to fill out all the information. Now, these screens can be a little intimidating because there's so much information we can have. And the idea here being that we could use QuickBooks as our primary source to track all the information we can on the customers. We want a lot of information for the customers so that we can, deal with them as best we can to provide as much service as we can do within a reasonable time. So note, however, that we don't need all this information in order to move forward with the customer information. The customer information screen here will be similar to the screen for a vendor, but note that the customers we generally want to have more information on than oftentimes many of our vendors, meaning when we pay somebody, like the utility bill, I don't need to know much more than the name that I'm going to put on the check, really. When I have the customers, however, we probably want to put more information if possible so that we can contact the customers and make sure that we are fulfilling needs and building relationships. So we've got the customer name, we've got the opening balance, we've got the company name, the full name, the job, and then all the contact information. Again, we don't need to fill all this information out in order to complete the customer information. All we really need is the name, because that's what we're going to use QuickBooks in order to track who owes us money by, and in order to put on the invoice so that we can ship it out. If we're going to mail the invoice, then of course we need the mailing address. If we're going to email the invoice, then of course we need the email information. Then we're going to have the payment settings that we can set up the different types of default, basically payment settings. We've got the sales tax settings, and we've got the additional information and job information. We're really only looking here at this time with the customer information up top. Now we're going to enter multiple information, multiple customers at one time. So we are once again going to be using a bulk entry type of system. So I'm going to close this back out with this little x, not the big X, but the little x. And we're going to select this drop down again, but instead of going to new customer, we're going to go to add multiple customer jobs. Multiple customer jobs. And we'll see a similar screen as we saw when we filled out the items, service and inventory items. We're going to enter this information in this format. Now we want to do this as efficiently as possible. So in order to do that, we're going to customize the data input screen up top and format these rows in the way that will be most easy for us to enter information into. So we're going to customize the columns up top. Customize the columns. Now these columns are what's available. These columns are what is currently in place, meaning we have the name, the company name, Mr., Mrs., Mr., Mrs., the first name, and so on and so forth. And what we want to do is, and that's going to be a little confusing again because this is vertical versus the horizontal layout. But just keep that in mind. We just got to visualize that this will be the horizontal layout when we go through here. Now, we could either add more stuff here or we can take stuff away using the add or remove buttons. And we can move these items up or down, or which would move them side to side up here, using the move up or move down buttons. Okay, so we're gonna keep this very minimal, just to enter the minimal information we will need for our data here. So I want to keep the name, of course. That's pretty necessary. We want to have the company name, and then I'm not going to put the Mr. or Mrs. So I'm going to remove this. Basically, I'm going to remove this. The first name, I'm going to remove that. Middle initial, remove that. Last name, remove that. Main phone number, remove. Fax, remove. Again, this is all good information if we have this information and we want to enter all this information as we go. But we're here just going to enter the essentials. So I'm going to remove that. Email, we're going to remove that. We're going to remove the CC, the bill 1, bill 2, 3, and 4, and 5. We do want to include a customer balance because this is going to be the first information, and that's really why we're putting this in here. We want QuickBooks to record the balance that this customer currently owes us as we set up the current system. And in doing so, QuickBooks will actually make a journal entry when we set this up, a journal entry which we don't have to record. QuickBooks will basically set it up for us. So we're going to add that customer balance, and then we want the opening balance date, because again, I want to make sure that we're recording this as of basically the date before the date that we're going to start entering data. So let's see if we can find this opening balance date. We're looking for opening balance date here. And of course, I was right on it here. So it was green. I couldn't see it because it was green. Okay, so we're going to add the opening balance date. So these are going to be the columns we want. Name, company name, customer balance, opening balance date. Once we do this, it will populate these rows in that order, in that format. Again, this is a minimal type of format that we're going to have just to enter those information. Main thing we want here is to get that customer name and the number owed to us, so QuickBooks could set up an aging report and track who owes us money. So I'm going to say OK. And so here's our rows. We can resize these rows by putting our cursor right on like those 3 dots. So it's not like that, but like that. Not like that, but like that. And I can drag, left clicking and dragging, left clicking and dragging. And there we have that information. So now let's start entering our data. So we're just going to type in here. I'm going to type in Anderson Guitars. It's going to be our first customer that currently owes us money. And I'm going to copy that. Once we type it in there, I'm right click and copy it. I'm going to put the same for the company name, which happens to be the same. I'm just putting the company name in name and company name here. Right click and paste. And then we're going to say that the balance here is $5,000. So they owe us $5,000 as of this time. Now again, I'm going to put this in there as of the first date that we're setting everything up as of, which is the day before. We're actually going to start entering data in the current time period. We're going to enter data in the current time period of 2019. So here we're going to put this in there as of 12/31/18, the end of last period. And then the next one we're going to have will be Jones Guitars. So I'm going to copy that once again. So I'm just typing in the name, copying that. I'm going to put that here, right click and paste 1, 2, 3. So we could just type those in there, just making the data input as easy as possible. We're going to put the amount then. They owe us $7,500. The date, once again, the day before the time that we're going to start entering data, 12/31/18. Note again, I'm just not putting dashes or anything. I'm making this as easy as possible, saving as much time on the data input as possible. It actually does save time over time. If you use more keystrokes and whatnot, be more geeky in the data input, then it'll save time. So the less mouse usage, the faster your data input will be. Then we're going to have Smith guitars. So these, right click and copy. So these are who we sell our guitars to. So we're selling here, and we're going to say that they owe us $8,000. And as of 12/31/18. So that's going to be our data. So go ahead, and we want to make sure to type this information in here. So go ahead and type this information in, and that will be the data that we will be using to move forward. Once we do this now, notice we're entering these customer balances, and QuickBooks is going to have to enter a journal entry again. And what does this customer balance relate to? Well, it relates to people owing us money. So where's QuickBooks going to put this information on our financial statements? On an asset of accounts receivable. They're going to add this up, put it into accounts receivable. But that's only one side. That's only a debit. Where's the other side? I mean, there's got to be two sides of every transaction. Well, that's what we'll have to see. What is QuickBooks going to do? It's going to try to make this as easy as possible so we don't have to enter a journal entry. And so it's going to say, hey, just enter the information here, and we'll just do something to make it work. So we're going to say, okay, let's see what it does to make it work. We're going to say save changes. And it's going to, 3 customer records have been saved. That's nice. And again, it changes the date here to the current date for me, but I bet you it's going to show up as of the date we entered it in the system, I hope. So let's check it out. If it doesn't, we'll change it. So we're going to go to reports up top. We're going to look at the balance sheet. We're going to go to reports. We're going to go down to company and financial. We're going to scroll down to the balance sheet within company and financial and see what QuickBooks did with this information. We're going to change the date to the end of the time period we will be working on, 12/31/19. And so because this is the balance sheet, even though we entered it in the system as 12/31/18, the day before we're going to be working on, this is like the end of the year we'll be working on. We actually entered it in there as of 12/31/18, but it's the only information we have, so it's on the book. So here it is in accounts receivable. And of course, it just took those 3 amounts and it added them up. If we double click and use the auto zoom, we're going to say double click, and it doesn't show anything. Why not? Because we're in the current year. We picked the year end that we'll be entering data in. We want to pick the first day of the prior year. So I'm going to say, how about 12/31/18 to up to here, and there they are. So they were entered as of 12/31/18. If you don't see them here, then try taking this date back further, or entering this date and going further out. If you don't find it, it's usually a date issue. You probably entered it into the system in a different date, and then we just need to fix that date. If we double click on any of these, we'll see the information for it. So if I double click and zoom in, use the zoom feature, then it doesn't show the same input screen, but it gives us this information here. And notice the form that it's using. It made an invoice. It made an invoice because that's usually the driving field that would be used, the driving form used by QuickBooks in order to tell the system that this customer owes us money. Now this is a bit of an unusual form because they probably didn't, we have no quantity down here. So notice where it put the information. It just put it to opening balance equity. So when we entered that information into the system, in other words, QuickBooks basically told itself, well, this must be an invoice, entered an invoice, didn't know the item because we don't have an item, and just like made it work by putting it to opening balance equity. So in other words, let's see what that means. I'm going to close this back out. We're going to close this out. We're going to close this out. Where's the other side of this? This is only one side. Something else had to happen. Well, it put it down here. It's in owner's equity. And so it's in owner's equity somehow. How did that happen? It put it into owner's equity. Let's see if it did anything to the income statement, because typically if we were to make an invoice, it would select something on the income statement. So let's go to reports up top here, reports. Let's go to company and financial. Now, of course, QuickBooks calls it the profit and loss statement. So we'll go to profit and loss. And the current year that we're going to be working on is 01/01/19 to 12/31/19. Now there's nothing there because we didn't enter it as of 12/31/19. So not like the balance sheet, this is a temporary system. It'll close out. So let's see if we go to the last year, make this 01/18 to 12/31/18. That's the year we entered it. We could say, oh, there's 20,500. Where did that come from? And that's the system putting it in place. So the system basically said, we're going to make an income statement account and put it into this uncategorized income. And that's why you don't want to do that in the current year, because that's why we want to put it in the prior period. Because as of the current time period, you'll see that there was nothing on the profit and loss, nothing on the income statement. Why? Because this 20,500 is a temporary account that rolls into retained earnings or to the capital account at the end of the time period. So this went away. It'll go away by the time that we start working on it and entering data. We're not going to run reports and have an income account of 20,500. It's okay that it's here now because it's here on the time period before we're going to start running reports. That's the point of putting this data input in the time period before we start wanting to run reports, so we don't have this kind of messiness on the reports. So this isn't a problem because we did record revenue, of course, because we made the sale sometime. That's why people owe us money. But we don't know when the sale happened unless we go back and enter all the invoices. So we want to draw a point in time and say, whatever people owe us money, I'm not going to get into the detail. That's our old records. We can look at our old records to figure that out. I just need to make the system correct as of now. And to do that, where it's okay to force it to go to the uncategorized income, because then when we start the current period, it will be okay. So if we go back to the balance sheet and the balance sheet open windows over here, then we're going to say we're okay now because it shows people owe us money here, and it's now in the owner's equity where we would expect it to be after the income statement rolls out. The other thing we want to check is going to be the customer balances, so the aging reports. So if we go to reports up top and we go say to customers and receivables, and let's say we take a look at the customer balance. Let's take a look at the customer balance summary account. And there we have our customer balances. Now I'm going to go ahead and export this report to Excel just so we get used to exporting these reports and printing these reports, looking at these reports as we go. So if we were to print this report, we could print it up here. If we want to export it to Excel, very useful feature, we can go to Excel, and I'm going to create a new worksheet. So I'm going to create a new worksheet in Excel. And then within here, we're going to create a new workbook. So we want a new workbook. So the worksheet is within the workbook. The workbook is the Excel file. I'm going to export that. And here we have the information. I'm going to make it a little bit larger here so we can see it. And that's going to be one format that we can use our reports in. If we wanted to print it from here, of course, we can format it and further format it here. And if we go to the File tab and Print, we'll see it does have the heading up top. So we have that information. I'm going to go back. I'm going to then save this. We could label the tabs. We could say this is the customer balance. And so, and that could be one useful way to format this stuff. Remember, every time we think about this stuff, we got to think about how we're going to present it to someone, either the customer or our employer. So then I'm going to go ahead and save this and just work on how can we save this documentation in a reasonable way. So I'm going to go to File tab. We're going to go to Save As. I'm going to go to Browse. I'm going to put this into a folder that we've set up. I set one up called Get Great Guitars. So that's our company file. Now typically we would probably put it in there by date, but I'm going to put it in there by the section we're working on. I'm calling this section 6 that we're working on. So I'm going to put it in there in section 6. And actually, I'm going to go back to Get Great Guitars. I'm going to put this into Reports. So I'm going to put this into Reports and then into section 6. And then I'm just going to call it, we could call it Customer Balance Detail because that's all we got, but I'm going to call it section 6 Reports. And we have that there. So I'm going to say save it. The following features could not be saved. It's not I'm not going to have the macros, so I'm going to go ahead and save it. And there we have that. So it's useful to be able to do that. The other way we might want to save it is as a PDF. And note, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can go to File. You can say Save as a PDF. Sometimes this feature can be a little bit finicky, a little bit problematic, a little trouble with it sometimes. If you have a printer, a PDF printer, that's always something that's a default that can work anytime you want to use it. So anytime there's a print button, you can print to a PDF in that way. So if you want to print the report, and I have a PDF writer, such as a Qt PDF writer, which is free, you can download it if you search for Qt PDF writer, then you can use this as the printer, and that's really useful because then you can always use that as a default. If you can't save as a PDF, the program won't let you, but it allows you to print. Then you can go to the Qt PDF writer and print. That's a workaround that's always useful, and it's a free program you can download. So I'm going to print the desktop. We're going to go to the Get Great Guitars folder, reports, and then once again, this one I am going to call customer balance. And again, we probably want a date or something there too, but I'm going to keep it at that and save that. So those are the two formats we might want to run the reports. If we have a lot of reports, then of course it's nice to use the Excel because you can put a lot of reports on one tab if that's something that whoever you're reporting to is okay with. Otherwise, you're gonna have to zip a file and give a file with a bunch of zipped reports in it, or attach a bunch of PDF files to a Word document or an email, which is a little messy. So those are our options. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.